You know the feeling when you've just come home from the supermarket and you unpack your groceries into your fridge? The vegetables, they are just popping with nice, bright colors. And you always feel comforting knowing that you have a fridge full of nice, fresh products with a long expiry date. When you close the door, you can almost hear that there is a party going on in there. They're like, hi, wow, we traveled together from Spain. That's really cool that we ended up on the same shelf. It almost feels like you have invited your friends to a party. Now, every time you open the door, they all want to be picked. They're jumping up and down with excitement, like, pick me, pick me. But as the days go by, some of them still find themselves never getting picked. Their initial glow starts to fade a little bit, and they start feeling a bit sad, old, wrinkly. Their self-esteem gets lower, and they slowly start crawling to the back corners of the fridge, maybe even hiding behind someone new and more fresh that has moved in. And their thoughts start to wonder, am I ever going to get picked? I still taste good. I'm not going to end up in the bin, am I? But if so, why did you buy me in the first place? I traveled so far to get here. My life started in Sri Lanka, where I was born. I was adopted, and I got to grow up in Sweden, in a really beautiful little village. This experience has led me to have a lot of respect and gratitude for life, and also the gratefulness to have food on the table. Now, in my house, when I grew up, my mom and dad were always telling me at the dinner table, finish your food, finish your food. Remember, there is children out there that have no food and have to go hungry. I don't know if you can relate, if you had the same when you grew up. This is something that most of us actually can recognize, We were brought up by the fact of throwing food away is just not something that you should do. And yet, we do. Now, the facts are just staggering, right? Basically, enormous amount of food is just thrown all through the value chain, and the Food and Agriculture Organization by the UN, FAO, they basically state that almost half of all the fruit and vegetables that we produce are thrown away. And billions of animals are slaughtered in vain, never reaching our plates. Those numbers are even hard to grasp, and the United Nations Environmental Programme, they give us a total. 930 million tons of food is wasted every year, all across the food chain. That basically means that we all need to work preventively, systemic, and we also need to change the way how we actually look at treating food. And we can basically all do it. Now, all of this throwing away things, it also has a big impact on a lot of different aspects in society. The climate and the environment, the food loss and waste that we throw, it's generating up to 10% of the greenhouse gas emission. And when we are wasting food, we're also wasting tons and tons of money. And third thing as well, which I find personally one of the most important one of all, it actually shines a light on how poorly we are managing our resources. Now, remember when your mom's dad, grandparents told you that people go hungry. You know what? They are right. 800 million people in the world go hungry every year, every day. Let me now set this straight. We have enough food on the planet today to feed everyone. Enough food. That is a broken system. How can we throw away all of that food when there's so many mouths to feed? How can we do that? We all do it. To me, that is just fundamentally wrong. And that is also the reason why I have decided to dedicate my life to the fight against food loss and waste. Now that's really heavy, heavy facts, but there is also good things happening here as well. There is governments, there is companies working to solve these issues, and I have had the opportunity to work in some different sectors, both food retailer, but also looking at solutions where you can distribute food from food places to consumers. And I've also had several opportunities to make sure that food gets to the people that actually need it the most. During these years, I've talked to so many people. I've heard reasons and excuses for throwing away food everywhere. And I've started to see patterns, which I find is the underlying reason why we throw food. Now, the values. We were brought up by, well, pretty much all of us were brought up with the fact that throwing away food is just not okay. But we all do it. That basically means that we have a gap between what we actually think we should do and what we actually end up doing. They're not aligned, these two. So it's a gap between our values and how we behave. The second one is basically that we undervalue food. So we undervalue food in the sense that it's the most essential thing for us, right? We don't survive without eating. None of us do. And yet, most of us treat it like trash. And thirdly, we also have a knowledge gap. We don't really know how to treat those old vegetables, those old friends that we have in those back corners of the fridge. What should we do with them? We don't know. We might not know that the best before date is just a recommendation. It's not a law, really. And the leftovers that we have in the fridge, they last for up to 7 days. So the findings of these made me really curious. Why do we treat food with such little respect? But it plays such an essential role in our life. And how come that we easily break our values so easily? Now, why are we wasting food? Well, there's a few reasons to this. One is that we live in a world of abundance. Most of us actually do this, right? And we have food everywhere. We are constantly, if we constantly have access to it. If we go to the supermarket, the shelves are completely full. And when we have constant access to something, it loses its value. So we live in a world of abundance. Also, we have longer distances between us and the farmers and the producers. So that basically leads us to not knowing where the food actually comes from or how it's produced. The good news is there are ways to get this back, and it is to really understand what food is, really. And for me, this happened because I asked a little friend for help. That friend, the tomato. My friend, the tomato. I traveled to Zambia, Africa. It was my first time there, and I found myself at the local tomato plantation. And it was so many tomatoes there, and I'm addicted. You can just imagine I was in paradise, right? But the thing is, when I was there, I got to meet the people that was working with these tomatoes. And their dedication, their love, sweat, and tears for this tomato, it just filled me with so much respect. And I realized food is not just food. Food is also the people behind the food. The second aha moment I had was actually watching a teledocumentary on tomatoes again. Right? This time it was going from a little seed, the plant, and it was traveling all the way through our houses. And I was just amazed, what a journey they do. And then it dawned on me that when I throw this away, I throw away all the resources that went into producing it. It's water, it's energy, it's fertilizer, it's everything that went into there. Also the people that was transporting it, packaging it, everything. And I realized I wasn't just throwing a tomato away. It was so much more. So speaking about food waste, we are sometimes not even aware that we throw away food, and we don't want to admit it because actually we don't really want to do it, right? But the thing is, we also think that our actions doesn't really matter. What does it matter if I throw a little thing in the bin? What it really does. Everything matters, you see. If in one day, all of us in Europe just saved one little cherry tomato like this one, then we would save a whopping 740 million tomatoes a day. That's a crazy number. That's big. That is impact, you know. And also habits. We do things out of habit too. I was at dinner at my friend's the other day, and by the end of the dinner, she went to scrape the things off her plate. And I looked at her and I was like, well, are you going to throw that away? And she literally just went like this. No. It was sliding into the bin. And I was like, well, what are you doing then? And she was like, oh. And she considered herself as food saver. But the thing is, she wasn't aware she was doing it, because to her, she was just rinsing her plates. So this is where I think we need some help. You know, I sometimes wish I had a little helper in my brain, like a stop friend or a stop voice or a freeze voice, something that makes me freeze when I do unwanted behaviors, you know. Wouldn't that be good, you know, just before I'm about to throw something unwanted like that I could still eat, before I throw it in the bin, something just goes, freeze, right? Allowing me to stop and really rethink, could I save that food in some way? Maybe I can repurpose it in other dishes in some way. And, you know, repurposing it basically means that you might not have a full meal there, but maybe you have a mid-snack, you know, a mellanmål, like we say in Swedish. So how can we now grab these learnings into changing our behaviors? Well, to me, it's one thing that is like completely crucial, and it's the gap between value and behaviors. And we really need to check in with ourselves. If we kind of all can agree that throwing food away is not something we should do, check in with yourself and your heart and look at your own behaviors. What do you really do? Do you act accordingly to this, or is there a gap? Second of all, you also need to take an active, concrete decision to stop wasting and start saving food. It won't happen just because you think it's important. It's like similar to when you go to the gym. You don't just automatically end up at the gym because you just wished you were. You have made an active decision to go there, to maybe start exercising. And as individuals, we have the power, really. We have a power ourselves, all of us, in here, everywhere. Because we all eat. Every day we eat. You know, several times a day we eat. So we can make a conscious choice, all of us. And that makes me so hopeful, you know. We have the power to change, all of us, just by small changes. We have different motivators to do this, changing behaviors. And when it comes to food waste, I can think of a few. The climate being one. Project Drawdown actually have come up with research showing that saving food actually is one of the biggest impacts that we can do to combat climate change. Both easy and effective, which is great, you know. And then we have the savings of money. Because, you know, saving food actually is saving money too. And it makes me feel smart because, you know, I paid money for it. So why should I throw it in the bin then? Makes no sense. You know, like what if I went to the cash machine, to the ATM, and I took out some money? It's not like I would just go, oh, nice, I'm just gonna. Huh? Would you? No, like, because that would be a bit, you know, quite silly to be honest. So that's what happens when you throw away food. That's the same thing. And also food is fun. It makes me creative. I think about new recipes, but also I get to train my senses. Because now what I do is basically I open fresh food. When I open it for the first time, I smell it. Why? Because if I don't smell it when it's fresh, how will I then know how it smells when it goes bad? I won't, right? So I need something to compare to. So smell it when it's fresh. You can do that too. So basically, what do we then need to do in order to change? Well, let me summarize this. So basically, reconnect with your values. Really check, what do you believe is right? What do you really think about throwing away food? And how do you really act? Remember, food is also more than just food. Food is the whole journey. It is the people behind it. And it's the struggles. It really is a true treasure. It's not trash. It's treasure, right? So imagine yourself, if we go back to the fridge story, imagine yourself being maybe in that fridge. Would you want to be picked? Or would you want to be in the corners? You know, I know what I would want. And now, every time I open my fridge, I see my friends. I see their journey that they've taken. I see their struggle, and I really treat them with the respect that they actually deserve. And that leads me to ask you, which person would you like to be? And which person are you right now? Are you a person that lives true to your values? Are you a person that shoves your friends into the fridge, neglect them, and maybe having to throw them away? Or are you a person that treats your friends with the respect that they deserve? We have the power to change, and we can all do it. If we do change our behaviors, we can change the norm. And by doing that, you know, we would change the way we look at food, and we would turn it into what it should be. It should be uncool and socially unacceptable to throw away food. And that is my dream. I dream of a world where everything that we produce gets eaten, and that we look at food as what it is. It's not okay to throw it away. So if you agree with me and really agree that we shouldn't waste food, then let your actions speak louder than your words. Let's change, and let's do it, not just for our values, but for society, for the environment, for climate, for injustice, and for our friends in the fridge. Thank you.